So the Jinn hypothesis essentially is very, I guess the first thing we want to start off with is highlighting that the process of reasoning, we've presented it in a philosophical form. We've used abductive reasoning, which basically means we've done a comparative study between the modern UFO, UAP, NHI phenomenon and what we call the jinn from the Islamic tradition. And we've identified several points of contact between the two different phenomena. And we've actually identified probably more than half a dozen. There's quite a few. So in the Jinn Hypothesis booklet, the first part, the first article, which was originally published in 2024, I cover four key areas of contact, which I believe are the sort of umbrella areas. They cover a lot of the different aspects of the phenomena, and they are appearance or manifestation, abduction, deception, and the possession phenomena, or the hitchhiker effect, or the attachment phenomena, if you like. And then in the second part, Farouk goes into more than half a dozen different ones. Since then, it's even in the first part, I think I've added two more categories: the link to water and telepathy, which I think are very predominant within both the UFO and Jinn sphere. So that's essentially what we're doing. We're doing a comparative study between the two. And based on that study, we are inferring to the best explanation, or it's an inference to the best explanation. If it quacks like a duck and it swims like a duck, as the old adage goes, then it probably is a duck. So it's well reasoned. We present our argument, we present our findings, we present our data, and we show the comparisons that we've done. And you can see for yourself that one link after another, it just matches over and over again. The only difference is that today, in modern sort of terms, it's referred to as NHI, or that's the current label. Over 1400 years ago, within the Islamic tradition, they were known as the jinn. And like you mentioned, 𝗶𝘁𝗶𝘁𝗮, that in other cultures and other traditions, as Patrick Harper says, there's no culture or civilization or tradition that hasn't had such an entity present or manifest. And if you study those entities too, whether it's the fairies, the fae, the gentry folk, skinwalkers, and the 𝗏𝗶𝘁𝗋, as we learned from you, 𝗶𝘁𝗶𝘁𝗋, in the Caribbean, they all display the same characteristics. They all fit into the same points of contact. And what this does is it highlights that there is a phenomenon, there are entities, there are beings who are not gods, they're not divine, they're not the God, they're not, and they are not angels per se. They don't behave like angels. They are not necessarily benevolent, at least not in their traits and characteristics. They seem to sit somewhere in between. So they seem to be that middle entity between humans and the divine realm. So essentially what we do is, and like I said, those 4 points of contact, just to briefly cover them. The first one, appearance and manifestation. If you look at the UFO UAP phenomena, what do you see? What do people experience? They see lights in the sky, they see orbs in the sky, they see craft in the sky, they see cryptids. Sometimes they see half dog, half human animals. They see strange creatures, bipedal creatures. They see the typical gray. So there's all of these manifestations. And if you look at the jinn in comparison, we know there's a very interesting narration of the Prophet, peace be upon him, where he said that the jinn are of three kinds: those that fly through the sky, those that come and go, and those that take the forms of dogs and snakes. So if we elaborate upon this and understand this for a moment, what essentially the Prophet's saying is that those that fly through the sky, I mean, that even in the use of language is very evident. We're speaking about things that fly through the sky, and UFOs, UAP are associated with the sky. Secondly, those that come and go. We know that this phenomena appears and disappears. Sometimes when it's speaking of the craft materialize and dematerialize. They come in waves. As per John Keel, for example, there's waves over this years and decades that this phenomena appears in certain locations in certain areas. Then if you look at the third form, which is essentially the physical form, the appearance of dogs, in the appearance of dogs or snakes, and we know it's not limited to those forms, this could be also seen as cryptids or other creatures and animals. And we have other narrations within the Islamic tradition which mention essentially cryptids, half human, half animal creatures, whether it's a human with the paws of a dog as for his hands and his feet, etc. So the match is there just with this one narration. And there's many other narrations, authentic narrations, that match perfectly as far as the appearance and manifestation of the phenomenon is concerned. Then looking at quickly the deception element. Deception is a well-known trait of the UFO, UAP, NHI phenomena. 𝗂𝗍𝗶𝘁𝗂𝗂𝗃, 𝗂𝗑𝗫𝗂𝗂, Gordon Creighton, and the list goes on. Many non-Muslim academics, secular modern academics, have understood this through studying these various cases and come to that very conclusion. The jinn are well known for deception. They play tricks, and by the way, it's not all jinn. A certain group of jinn who are identified as shayateen in Arabic, which is the evil ones, the ones that deceive, they are known to deceive people. They are deceptive by their very nature. We see this deception even in places like Skinwalker Ranch. The trickster element, as is referred to by Jim Simiwan, for example, we find that amongst the jinn. The third one is abduction. Now, abduction is a very interesting one because, again, it's a key area of the UFO phenomena. Abduction is central to the whole UFO discussion. John Mack, for example, head of psychiatry, studied this, wrote an entire volume on it, was ridiculed for it. But nevertheless, he published his findings, and one of his conclusions was that this phenomena cannot be put down to mass hysteria. This is coming from a academic, secular, professor, essentially, the head of psychiatry in Harvard. And abductions are found in Islamic tradition as well. We have narrations from very close to the time of the Prophet, during the time of Umar ibn al-Khattab, who was one of the caliphs. There was a man who was abducted, returned after several years. He was questioned why he went missing, and he said, I was taken by a group of jinn. I was abducted by them. They kept me captive. And then when another group of jinn came and they fought with them and they overcame them, then they saw I was there and they couldn't keep me, so they gave me an option. You can either return or you can remain with us. He chose to return. Then there's also narrations of the Prophet, peace be upon him, saying that keep your children in after dark. Other similar narrations mention keeping also your animals in a certain location. So the jinn don't take them, they don't kidnap them. Then you have the possession phenomena, the fourth one, which is, or the attachment phenomena. Now, in modern ufology, you have a term, the hitchhiker effect. It specifically is referring to this phenomena where people, when they visit a Skinwalker Ranch or other hotspots in the world, or if they've had UAP, UFO experiences as per 𝗂𝗶𝘁𝗶𝗂𝗂𝗃, there is an attachment phenomena that occurs after that. Something follows these people, attaches itself to these people, disturbs these people, disturbs the extended family members, their friends, etc. It's almost like a virus is described as. Same thing we find amongst the jinn. This is probably one of the most well-known aspects of the jinn, that they can possess, and if not fully possessed, then they can attach themselves to people. They can become besotted over people. They can follow people around and disrupt their lives. Then we have the link to water. And just quickly running through these, in the UFO, again, within the UFO world, there's the whole topic of USOs, unidentified submerged objects. Most of the footage that was dropped by the American government recently, on the 3 drops, a lot of the footage is over water, bodies of water. The Tic Tac, the Nimitz, was over water. So there seems to be a very strong link with UAP, UFOs, and water. Within the Islamic tradition, again, we find the same link. Firstly, in the Quran, the jinn are described as divers, at least, and as some of the jinn are described as divers. Furthermore, we find narrations where the throne of Iblis, who is one of the jinn, is over water. He establishes his, if you like, modern terms, his base over water. Then there's another narration, an interesting one, that stops at a companion, which mentions that the jinn, the evil jinn, are shackled or chained within the oceans, and that they will be freed near the end of time, and they will come with a new revelation. And this is a very interesting narration, one that you can really spend a lot of time exploring, because one of the things we're seeing within the modern UFO phenomena is that there are now claims being made that these NHI are bringing new revelations to people. They have their contactees, such as Bledsoe, Stephen Greer, and others, and they're delivering messages to them. Then the final one is telepathy, which is telepathy. If we to define, if you look at the definition within the dictionaries, it's essentially the communication between 2 entities or beings, which is done without the use of the vocal cords or voice. It's done through the mind. Now, we know the jinn engage in telepathy in modern use of language, because they communicate into the mind. They whisper into the mind. They inject thoughts into the mind. If you look at the UFO experience, if you look at the experiences, most of them, you could say 99% of them, say that these entities or beings don't speak to them through language. They speak to them directly into their minds. So these are just 6 points of contact. There's several other points of contact. And based on all of this, this is why we say, based on this, we infer, and I would say that it's an inference to the best explanation, that what we're witnessing today behind the whole UFO NHI are the jinn. And they've been known by many other names in many other cultures and traditions across the world. But this is the best explanation. It's the explanation that has the greatest explanatory power, the greatest explanatory scope, and the greatest explanatory depth. It explains not only the nuts and bolts aspect of the phenomena, but it also explains the paranormal aspect of the phenomena. So it's very comprehensive. And I know I'm going on now, bro, so I'm going to stop there. That was just a summary. And back over to you, 𝗶𝘁𝗶𝘁𝗃.
Yeah, Sam just wanted to comment, and then there's a couple of points there. I just wanted to jump in because it's kind of, yeah, some very good, interesting points of contact. But please, Brother Sam, go ahead.
Hi, thank you. I just wanted to say something quickly. Maybe we'll make the idea closer to some of the audience because I noticed many audience expect that the jinn are equals directly demons or the jinn just the genie of Aladdin. There is a Christian writer called C.S. Lewis. He claimed that there was, as how Imran was saying, there are a middle nation between humans and angels. To 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 conceptualize it, he said they have the abilities, they are closer to the angels in a way that humans are not, and closer to humans the way that angels are not. So they can be metaphysical, they can have supernatural abilities. However, they have needs like humans. They have the moral faculty, they have free will, they can do good or bad by their own choices, and they can build nations and civilizations and even maybe even technology. He claimed that these ideas are even like they used to call them daimones in the Roman and the genius in the Greek, which is coming from the jinn. They say that this was eventually removed from the Christian perspective. He's a Christian writer, but he said that eventually this was removed, but it was just to make it closer to the humans to understand. It really matches out. The jinn have not all bad; they are just in the middle.
Okay, brilliant, brilliant. Yeah, just a couple of points I wanted to pick up on that Imran said, and it kind of brings it home and gives it a little bit more, flushes it out, and people can hopefully grasp it a little bit more what we're actually suggesting here tonight. There is a highly recommended book I would suggest if everybody has an opportunity to get hold of it, and it's a historical kind of study into the UAP phenomena by 𝗧𝗶𝘁𝗃. And in the book, he mentions a couple of instances, essentially, where what the phenomena does is it manifests, if technologically wise, just that one step ahead of humanity. So I believe it's around about the 14th century. I believe it was in Ireland, actually, where people recorded a galleon in the sky. So a normal ship that you would see on the ocean with, you know, wind power, people recorded seeing it in the sky to the degree that they said that an anchor was thrown down. It got caught on the corner of a church. And they say, and I quote, a sailor jumped out and literally swam down to release the anchor. During the 18th century, sort of like just verging on the beginning of well, as we would come into the 19th century, across, I believe it was Midwest America, there was the whole airship phenomena. So there was recordings of airships that were sighted by people in localities who interacted with the crews and the pilots. They were often told, you know, oh, this is to do with industrial development, or this will be known soon. And then obviously now with the echo, with the echo of the atom, now we get what we call, you know, the UFO phenomena. That actually, incidentally, if we understand, does go hand in hand with the very famous Babylon working of Jack Parsons. So there does seem to be a link, an occult link with the appearance of these particular things. Just very quickly, two more points, and then, you know, I'll hand it back over. Imran said something very interesting that the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said about bringing your children in essentially at dusk, because this is when the satanic jinn or the jinn, they go out into the land. A recent study was done where it looked in America, and it looked specifically at Bigfoot sightings. And it said the majority of Bigfoot sightings happened what we would call in a 40-minute window after dusk. So there is that kind of like, this is something the Prophet Muhammad is talking about 1400 years ago, but yet we see that kind of modern crypto phenomena that seems to link in with it. Very lastly, there is the very famous narration, and this is something that is also within the Old Testament, about the worst of demons being cast into the sea and being imprisoned in the sea, and then they will be released later on in time. One of the aspects that Imran spoke about is the ability of the jinn to have telepathic abilities. In Arabic, it is called waswas. What's very interesting is that we see, particularly in the last 50 years, was the rise of the very famous author H.P. Lovecraft. Lovecraft is famous for his Cthulhu universe. And essentially in the short story that he wrote, which is called The Call of Cthulhu, he spoke about like a demon entity, space, ancient one, that was like a god that would have been worshipped as a god in ancient times, that is, you know, that is just waiting to be released upon humanity. And it does bring up an interesting question, and that is, how much has humanity not just been influenced on a spiritual religious instance, but how much have they been able to influence us through popular culture and things like that? Like I say, we have the very famous Greek muses. If we understand it and kind of utilizing, you know, our faculty, is there a potentiality that what we call the Greek muses were in fact these jinn manifesting, and they would be telepathically implementing or implanting ideas that then became what we call stories, but were maybe setting up ideas and principles in society to become easily accepted at later on. So a lot of kind of interconnecting points there. But this is why, and this is one of the things that we do talk about with IREP. If you try to investigate the phenomena just from a case of nuts and bolts UAP extraterrestrials, you're kind of going to get a bit caught there. You have to understand, as Vallée understood, and even Alan Hynek towards the end of his life understood, you kind of have to have a wider appreciation of the whole phenomena. So that includes poltergeist activity, it includes UAP NHI, it includes cryptids, all of which, as we see, are, for example, in somewhere like Skinwalker Ranch. So yeah, hand it back over to you, brother Imran.
Yeah, it's brilliant points, bro. Absolutely. We got links. She's had their hand up for a while now, so we can go to links, and then anyone else who wants to jump in.
Yeah, thank you. No, I was just wondering, we know about these archetypes of how they're behaving. Like you said that some fly, some just bounce in and out. There's others that are doing like of attachment to. Anyway, so how have you guys made any anyway, have you guys ever heard of plasma? It sounds like a jinn. It sounds like it behaves like a jinn if it's conscious, if it's sentient, if it knows it's
Yeah.
alive and it could die. So therefore, it has to be like trying to survive. So if you take this jinn descriptions, how they have it in the scriptures and the things, we will see a pattern of behavior that would probably conducive to its survival, and therefore we could just figure out what does it want, things like that.
Yes, a brilliant point, Links. Thank you for sharing. It's actually something we've been speaking about recently, the past couple of months, and we are of the opinion that the most likely that the jinn are comprised of plasma. They are sentient plasma-based life form, or in Grush's words, a sentient plasmoid, you can say. And we have, it's again, it's not an ad hoc conclusion we've come to based on what's been discussed today. So, for example, I'm currently writing an article on this now. The idea that the jinn are plasma, we can find it if we go back to the Quran, for example. There are certain key Arabic words that are used to describe what the jinn are comprised of, what their original substance is. So 3 key words: marij in Arabic, samum, and jinn itself. If you do an etymological study of those 3 words, what you realize, so I'll give you them briefly now. The word jinn in Arabic essentially means hidden, or a being that's invisible. If you look at the word marij, which is used to, and in English is translated as they were created from a smokeless fire. The word marij basically means it's a substance that's mixing, it's a substance that's volatile, it's a substance that's energetic, and it has all of these other connotations to it as well. Now, if you look at plasma, it's essentially how you would describe plasma. It's a volatile, mixing substance. And when you say mixing, the way you can see that is that the ions, the electrons are stripped from the ions in a plasma. So it's a mixture of electrons and ions, but a well-balanced mixture, controlled by electromagnetic fields, etc. And then if you look at the word samum, it also has meanings of something that's fiery, that's piercing, that's energetic, etc. Again, indicative of plasma. So if you combine all 3, something that's invisible, energetic, a mixed substance, a volatile substance, a piercing substance, I would say, if you look at it from the perspective of today, and through the perspective of the language of science, what we call plasma, I think is a good fit, and it makes sense. And it would also theoretically at least explain, that if it's a plasma-based life form, and it has to some degree control over the electromagnetic spectrum, it would be able to shift its state from a plasma to a physical or near physical state where it becomes visible to human beings, even though it's temporary. But it works. Theoretically, it works, them being plasma. And I personally feel that they are plasma-based. However, then it goes into an interesting discussion as well, because once they manifest into our physical plane, into our density, then the question is, are they susceptible to things that we are susceptible to? Now, based on, again, from the theological perspective, Islamic perspective, it seems like that the jinn, when they've taken on physical form, they are susceptible to things that other physical things are susceptible to. So there's narrations of a jinn being in the form of a snake, and it was killed in that form. So it seems like they know this, and this is therefore a threat to them, and that may explain why they don't always appear so readily to people in physical form. They choose to manifest in other ways, either forms of light, spheres, orbs, or even through the sort of telepathic channel. But it's a very interesting area. I don't know if anyone else wants to chime in on that, on the plasma link.
Yeah, I just wanted to add something very quickly into that, Brother Imran. And that is kind of like the study of what I would call universal folklore. If we go back, say, for example, to Ireland a couple of 100 years ago, one of the things that they say, like the fairy folk didn't like iron, seem to like metals of some kind. And if we look at the nature or the makeup of the jinn as a plasma-based life form, them coming into contact with like metals would have a very disastrous effect on them. Essentially, it would interrupt their ability to maintain a corporeal state. So even folklore seems to weigh up and come in evidence from the Islamic perspective that this phenomena is a plasma-based life form, and that is based out by what the Quran says, and even folklore about interacting with this phenomena globally around the world, with its fairies, even werewolves, stuff like that.
Yeah, and there's more, bro. There's other interesting here. So, for example, when it's, sometimes when people are having an experience, or just prior to an experience, people see orbs of light, or they see flashes of light. Now, this again makes sense from the perspective of plasma, because to go from a plasma density to a physical state, there has to be a shedding of energy. There has to go somewhere. So maybe the energy is being shed in the form of photons. So people see flashes, people see orbs, etc., prior to a physical manifestation. The nuclear link with nuclear sites, UFOs and nukes, etc., the book by Hastings. there's a clear link between UAP and nukes, especially since the mid-40s when they started doing tests. These things started to appear. These UAPs started to appear around these places. I think the reason probably is because our nuclear activity is disrupting their world and their makeup. Because plasma is, like we said, it's comprised or held together by very delicate electromagnetic fields. And those are very easily disrupted either through those metals you mentioned, they can cause disruption, or through nuclear energy, especially a nuclear explosion, because with a nuclear explosion, you get two things. You get higher rates of EMPs, which are released. And on top of that, you also get high amounts of radiation. Both are detrimental to plasma because they can disrupt the balance of plasma completely. So that may explain why they have this interest towards our activities with nuclear weapons, and they, it's a threat to them in some respects. Again, this is speculation, but I think it adds up even from a speculatory perspective. At least theoretically, it makes sense.
I have an interesting point about plasma. So, in Islamic narration, the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, he said that he spoke about Iblis or Satan, the evil jinn. They can go through the human's bloodstream. So, looking at the human bloodstream, it's actually 55% of the blood volume is made of something called blood plasma, which is roughly 92% water. However, maybe that's just a speculation. Maybe that's what the jinn can easily merge into or enter through the bloodstream. Especially also that research have realized people who have low iron in their blood do have higher experiences.
Yeah, that's a very interesting link.
Isn't there some cases? Sorry to interrupt you, brother.
No, go ahead, bro.
There's been some cases, I believe, where contactees have been told to kind of take on a more vegetarian diet, i.e., leaving them bereft of iron and metals within their system.
Yes, I've seen
Yes.
this and I experienced this with my friends who became vegetarian due to NTT instructions, unfortunately.
Link says the hand up. Farouk's joined us as well. I'm going to send Farouk a request to invite to speak as well. Link's back over to you.
So there is a theory simulation. It includes the observation clause of observer could affect the outcome. Like that just shows that our energy that we hold, that we have, is so powerful. Like rearrange molecules, I believe. And maybe this energy is the thing that are coming to gather for their survival. Could that be a thing?
Abu Salah, you want to take that one?
To be honest, I think it's just really something as very simple as they want to put themselves in a state of, whether that is, I would say, spiritual empowerment over us, or whether that is like some kind of physical empowerment over us. And I think that is the crux of it at the end of the day, is to put us in a subservient position to them. I mean, these entities, as and when they do appear, they appear to have quote unquote godlike abilities. They seem to know what I'm thinking before I actually say it. They seem to be able to, like I said, to have these very extraordinary abilities. But a lot of it seems to be, like I say, I mean, 𝗏𝗏 𝗏𝗏 is probably the best example of that today, and the lady. And essentially, the lady is this pushing the feminine divine. And this is the interesting thing. A lot of people are under the misperception and a misunderstanding that kind of like some kind of catastrophic disclosure would destroy religion. It's not about destroying religions. It's about subverting religion, subverting spirituality and faith, so that what happens is we end up worshipping them. And we know now that from some of the leaks that have come from the American government, that this is kind of what the internal, supposedly secret information is that these entities are our creators that brought us into existence, And as we know, there have been a couple of cases recently of leading Christians in America that have been told, start preparing your congregations. This is the information. They are our creators. Jesus was one of them. You know, Jesus, peace be upon him, was either some kind of hybrid. So I think it's less about the energy that we maybe exhibit, we give off, and it's about that. It's about getting humanity into a spiritual enslavement to them. The same way that we see this in the ancient civilizations of Greece, Rome, and particularly ancient Egypt, that I come to call the empire of the jinn, because essentially that's what it was.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It could be. I think it makes sense. If you, at least if you look at historically, you see that what they've actually wanted is servitude. They wanted sacrifice and servitude from human beings. And when they got that, that's what satisfies them. So yeah, I mean, I'm sure there's many other perspectives as well. HK's got his hand up. Farouk is on as well. Farouk, feel free to jump in whenever you like, bro. Take over the mic. HK, over to you.
Assalamu alaikum. So I've been studying this 𝗧𝗶𝘁𝗶𝘂 for a very long time now, and in fact, I've actually tried to bring it up to local sort of communities within the mosques, muftis, imams, and that kind of stuff. And a lot of them just have absolutely, I don't know what it is, whether it's no interest in the topic or they don't understand the sort of detrimental impact this could have in the future, or they might not even believe in it. So I guess my question is, what can we do as a religious community as a result of what's happening? How can we approach this? How can we convince people?
It's a good question, bro. I think Farouk, he's got some thoughts on this, definitely. So if you can speak, bro, let us know if you heard the question, and you can address it, bro.
Sure, I heard it. 1 sec, I've got a fan on. Let me turn it off. So, it's a great question, man. I think this, by the way, this question applies to, I think, a lot of communities. The modern world has allowed, especially with social media and with the way that we interact with one another, we have become more compartmentalized, for want of a better word. Not using it in the sense of the program, but in general. You know, if you're into, for example, horses, yeah, you like horses or whatever it might be, you can find a community out there that, you know, you can share a mutual, you know, love for a particular sport or whatever it might be. And that's accentuated by social media. So we're now more compartmentalized than ever before. We don't really rub shoulders with or befriend or get close to people, you know, except for in school, out in adult life with people who don't share similar ideas and thoughts. So when you want to approach an entire group with something that it's not in their wheelhouse, not something that they are familiar with, it's very difficult to bring change, especially nowadays. So to approach, say, a Muslim community or the Christian community, Catholic, whatever it might be, or look at the problems that they're having trying to convince the scientists who are, you know, as they claim, you know, they put data at the front. They, you know, they can't affect change with them. So I think has to be a level of patience exerted from our side, from people like us who are familiar with the topic and want to bring everybody else up to speed. We have to have a lot of patience, and a lot of people aren't going to get it. You know, it's something which isn't they're not familiar with, and it seems very strange. And I'll give you an example. Me and Imran, I hope you don't mind me telling this story, Imran. Me and Imran, we was invited to speak about this topic in one of the towns in England. So we prepared to go up there. We had you know, a presentation that we made. We discussed the topic and we brought the evidences. And there was a guy, an uncle, really nice old guy, really respectful. Right up until the point we started talking about the UAP UFO topic, and then he became quite irate, and he felt like he was defending a position that he couldn't articulate, and nor could he refute ours. So he didn't know what, he just knew that we were wrong somehow, even though he couldn't explain why or what his issue was. He just wanted to go against what we had to say. And that was coming from within him. He couldn't help himself. I think we're going to get a lot of people like that across all communities. And, you know, seeing as you're asking about how you try to approach people in where you are and from your community of Muslims, I think this is something that applies to everybody. It's going to be really difficult. What we are seeing, and we spoke about this the other day, me, Imran, and 𝗬𝗓𝗓 on one of the live shows we done. What we're seeing, and I think this is good in a way, is we're seeing a lot more people with, among the Hollywood, quote unquote, that type of popular people. Dr. Phil, for example, is now talking about UAP. And we predicted this. We said we think we're going to see a change in attitude towards UAP from both news and entertainment media. So people who are popular, who are influencers, are going to be talking about it, because that's going to come from this change that's happening in the American government. American government, whatever you want to say about it, is a very powerful tool of promoting their ideology. So powerful, in fact, that, you know, McDonald's is all over the world, right? So corporate America and the American government are very good at promoting their ideology. So we're going to see them do a lot of the heavy lifting. It's going to be broached in the news, and that's where we come in. People like us who are familiar with it, we can tidy up the ideas and just be available to the people. That's all I can say. Maybe I spoke a little bit out of turn here, because I've only just joined, and maybe I spoke a bit too much on it. But I think just be patient and be available. That's all I can say. And be gentle with the people, because no one's going to just, most people aren't just going to click with it. You do get a few, don't get me wrong. There are people out there who are sharp as a razor. And as soon as they hear the data, they put two and two and say, oh, no, this definitely something strange. A lot of the general population, they're not ready for it. And we need to allow the disclosure effort to do what it's been doing, even though maybe for a lot of us it's been a bit slow. But for the general public, I think it's good for them. And just be ready and available to help explain it. Hopefully that all made sense, yeah? Wicked. 𝗧𝗶𝘁𝗶𝘂𝗰𝗁 for letting me come up, Imran. Sorry if I've derailed it a little bit there. But how is everyone?
No,
Hope everyone
no,
is
we're
well.
good. We're good. That's
We've
good,
got a
bro.
lot of the original people who've been coming in, and we've also got a lot of new guys I haven't seen around. So I just want to say hi to everyone.
And Jolly's on today as well. Hope you're well, Anjali. Hope things are good.
And the OG Anjali, she's been doing this for a very long time. Hope you're doing well. Amanda, welcome. HK, you're always here. Afaq, of course, you're always here. Joe, Link is always here as well with the little doppy. Naz, I think you're an OG as well. Sacred, welcome. Blue, Hermetic, Umar, 𝗬𝗓𝗓𝗂𝗃𝗃, welcome. I think Kelly, I'm not sure if you've been coming here for a while, but welcome anyway. Big Hot, Rahmat, Rahan. Dude, what is that? Cased? I don't know. Is that a very unwell Kermit the Frog? Welcome anyway. Jews. Oh, okay, now I'm not going to read that out. The little fireball thing. Flying J 98, Waleed and Isaac. Welcome.
Yeah, bro. So we were talking about the Jinn hypothesis, essentially, just going over it again and addressing it.
Yeah. I think 𝗬𝗓𝗓𝗓 from your mic live, bro.
No, I'm here, man. I'm here, bro. Alhamdulillah.
Is it only me? Or is you guys getting an echo as well?
Getting an echo.
𝗬𝗓𝗓𝗓, can you mute yourself 1 second? Is it better now?
Yeah, that's much better.
Yeah, that's weird.
Yeah, so yeah, first, I don't know if we have touched this already. Yeah, the latest drop, I haven't gone through it yet, but this is just a prime example of them doing this foundational work to bring it to make it more mainstream. And Dr. Phil, like of all the people who would talk about the UAP talk, I never thought somebody like it would be like Dr. Phil, but I've seen Dr. Phil has posted about it, I think it was today or yesterday. And also, I might be a bit behind the times of this because I haven't been as active as a lot of you may know. But also, Neil deGrasse Tyson is changing his tune on it. That, to me, indicates a change from behind the scenes. Now, what does that mean for us and the Jinn hypothesis? Well, ultimately, our claim is, from this side, from the Islamic side, or I'd say from the religious side, our claim is that this is something normal and it's a fact of life that these things exist. Yeah, and the information we have about them being builders, technologically advanced, within our own human history, that they've caused advances among certain nations, and through their dedication and their worship, they've allowed some nations to prosper over others in exchange for worship. This is, evident to us, and this seems, and obviously God knows best, this seems to be just another ploy that we're going through now. I know there's experiences in this room. I'm one of them as well. I would say that the people who have been close to the technology and are financially benefiting from it and financially benefiting from downloads, these are the selected few who are going to be the shapers of the new ideology that's going to emerge from this revelation. That's my view. I think they're the chosen guys, and they already are showing us what they think about these things and how important they think their technology is for the future of mankind. And the question is for you guys, I think for everyone as well, and I wouldn't mind anyone jumping up and answering this: how far do you think the governments of the world are willing to go in order to have technological supremacy? Or let me say it like this: to have a technology that gives them complete supremacy, a very odd, all-encompassing technology that dominates all others. How far do you think a government is willing to go? How low do you think they're willing to stoop in order to have that power in their hands? What would they do, if for example, they have to harm children, or it's part of it that you have to abuse children? Do you think they would do that? Do you think that they would harm others to keep that secret? How despicable do you think the governments are willing to be? Whether or not there's a lot of good that will come from the technology, the people who will have their hands on it and who are in control of it and who we know are in control of it, how despicable are they willing to become in order to maintain that position over the rest of us? I think that's a very important question, and disclosure doesn't really want to talk about that. They want to imagine a world where the technology is available to all, or available to a few, and that good is done. It's shared and slowly, changes the world. I don't think that's ever going to be the case. And even though we are having a disclosure, definitely it's happening very slow, but it's happening right in front of our eyes. To what extent are we going to have control of what we know about what's going on? And how bad is it really behind the scenes? What do people think about that? I know, and you guys know as well, who've been following this for years, that there's a lot of positive stories that come out from experiences, but then the people who are trying to control the information are willing to do anything, absolutely anything, to maintain control and to maintain technological supremacy. And I think that, is it worth our humanity, and I mean that in the complete sense of the word, is it worth our humanity to allow these people to control the future? I don't mean that in a supernatural sense, like they're controlling the future. I mean that this is what they want, and this is the future they're choosing for us. Look at right now, it seems a bit frivolous. Trump's dropping a little, getting people to drop a few videos, but this is no president has ever done this. This is huge. I don't think people maybe have understood how the gravity of what he's done. But he's started a snowball effect that, regardless, this is what's going to happen now. We're going to have a disclosure of some description, and it's going to happen very soon. Not small disclosure, I mean a bigger version of it. How soon? We predicted, 10 years, maybe a bit more longer. But where does that future leave us? What do you think, Imran? I have I think quite a pessimistic view of it, but I don't think they have I don't think they have good intentions in terms of the future of humanity. I think they have good intentions towards themselves and what that could mean, what it could mean to have that at their own disposal and to be in control of it. Have I killed the space?
No,
Sorry, guys.
Yeah, I was just going to say, I was going to add into that. I think it's a really good question you're asking, and that is how far these governments, these select elite, how far they would go to maintain superiority and dominance, not just on a countrywide level, but even within social society and so forth. And for me, I love history. I love looking at history. Let's look back at the ancient civilizations. They were prepared to kill their own. They were prepared to sacrifice a few people. The Aztecs, the Mayas, that were sacrificing their own people because they believed that these probably entities that were masquerading as their gods, if I sacrifice someone, that means the rain's going to come along. And we've seen this throughout human history, that we've got contactees that are being told, if you want to communicate with us, well, just cut your finger and shed a little bit of blood. I think it's always pushing that boundary to see how far they can get humanity to essentially dehumanize themselves. And that is one of the things that we see within the Islamic tradition, that Satan mentions this, is that he will bring humanity to a low state where they will lose that aspect of a spiritual being, and it just becomes about the impulse, and it becomes about wealth and power. So how far would any nation go? I think it will go to the extremes, and we've seen it historically in history.
Yeah, I'm complete agreement, bro. Some of the stuff that we've heard, now it's not confirmed, but 𝗧𝗶𝘁𝗶𝘁𝗶, he claimed that there's children being taken from around the world to. Sorry, it's got quite a bad echo.
𝗓𝗓, mute your microphone when you're not speaking so it doesn't echo.
Yeah, that's better. Sorry about that. It's just hearing my own voice, man. It just cringes me. I don't want to hear myself talk. Yeah, you lot have to suffer with it, not me, all right? So, 𝗧𝗶𝘁𝗶𝘁 said that they're grabbing up children from around the world who have been through difficult times, which is allegedly, after a lot of stress and turmoil and emotional turmoil, that is when these senses are heightened, this fight or flight sense is heightened, so they nab these people up and they use them in the program, right? If that means that we get at some point in the future or a company has control of a technology that gives us cleaner energy, is it worth it? That's my question. For us, 𝗓𝗓, like specifically you know what mankind's willing to do, right? I remember the Nile back in the day. The Nile it used to dry up, and they used to take people and they would throw people in the Nile as a way to bring the water back, and they did it to a deity that they thought was in control of the Nile. And it wasn't till the advent of Islam that this stopped, right? So
In terms of Egypt, I just wanted to make a quick comment that yes, besides sacrificing this for the Nile, surprisingly, until today, people who know that they are dealing with jinn, they do get something in return, i.e., some people, and we have many cases reported by the police, that someone would sacrifice, unfortunately, children from their own family in order to get downloads of a location where they can find hidden treasures.
I've
So
heard
it
the same.
pinpoints him like a GPS, like a remote viewing, in return for doing this. And this still happens.
I haven't got a verification on this yet, but I've heard, and God knows best, of course, they do the same for petrol. This isn't like just relegated only to the local poor man who's trying to find treasure, hidden treasure underground. And this has been reported in academic papers and peer-reviewed, I believe, in some of the academic journals, that people use spirits or jinn to find treasure. But it goes beyond that, and corporations do the same thing, especially in China. I don't know about petrol, but certainly they use spiritual warfare in corporate business in China. It's like a normal thing. You need to have a warlock, and you need to have like a wizard to protect yourself, from the black magic of one another. They're constantly doing spirit magic on each other. So this is the norm in their culture. Western culture, it's less known, less talked about, but it still happens. And we've heard so many times about how it happens in entertainment media, music, so on and so forth. But how does it happen in technology? Does it happen in these science things? If they are taking these children, as 𝗧𝗶𝘁𝗍𝗂 says, is it worth it to have a green planet in the future? That's quite a terrible question to ponder on. Is it worth our souls, if you like, and our moral values in order to have a technologically advanced nation? If they say, look, give us a couple of 100,000 children, right? Yeah, and we're going to give you clean green energy, 0 point energy, whatever it might be. We're going to give you the keys to this device that we've shown you, and you've had it in your coffers for years now. 𝗧𝗶𝘁𝗍𝗂 worked on it, let's say, and you've been working on it, and you ain't got nowhere. But we're going to show you how to unlock it. All you got to do is submit to us. How many guys are going to say yes? And us who have this information hidden from us to a certain extent, and we want to have a green planet and clean energy, and it's frustrating. They've got this technology, but they're not giving it to us, meaning the program knows about this technology, not sharing with us. But what if that's the cost? How many of us would be willing to pay that? Because I certainly wouldn't, that's for sure.
Yeah, just to add into that, brother Farouk, inshallah. I mean, let's look at the recent example of Jeffrey Epstein. The guy was obsessed with propulsion, anti-gravitational devices. He had some of the best scientists in the world literally at the end of his phone, that he could give them a call, inviting them to his little island and doing God knows what. And we really do mean that. But what we can say definitively about Epstein, this man was using and abusing young girls. We know definitively, and this is a case that hasn't been reported on, but has been in some of the alternative press. A woman was talking about how Epstein was abusing her, and he literally morphed into an alien grey. We know, as it came out, the revelation earlier this year, that he was requesting pieces of the covering of the Kaaba in Mecca. That was probably to do some kind of satanic rituals, because the thing is with these entities, for you to gain more power, you have to debase yourself even more. And whether that is you debase yourself through extreme sexual practices, or you debase yourself through extreme spiritual practices, at the end of the day, it's about dehumanizing you and making you subservient to them. And they will do it by hook or by crook, as my mum used to say.
Yeah, that brings me to the name of what we were discussing, the Jinn hypothesis. So, what point does not just the Jinn, but in general, what point does religion serve here? Well, this is, and this might put a lot of people off, but this is where the true sort of the two sides become clear, right? You've got the side who believes that we are a creation of an all-powerful being, and you've got this other emerging ideology that we are a creation of a group of powerful beings, and that we were a, you know, genetically modified ape or something similar to that, whatever theory that they're going to put out there. The point that the Jinn hypothesis and the religious understanding serves is to highlight this side of the coin. I think in this case, we can't have our cake and eat it. We can't have the technology without the subservience. I don't think it works like that. Just to bring 𝗧𝗶𝘁𝗹𝗲 back up, I watched one of his latest documentaries, and it weren't a documentary; it was a podcast. But what he describes, you know, is what he said is something new, something different. It's not an anti-gravitics; it's a new force or a new type of force, yeah, that he's working on. If they've had that since the 80s, this knowledge of this craft, why hasn't it come out? I don't believe that we have a reverse engineered version of it and that we have complete control or understanding over it. I think it's akin to, you know, saying that say microbitic life form can drive a car. Like, there's such a huge wide difference between the two life forms, the human life form and this other life form, that we can only see the effects of it. We can only see that it's working and benefit from its, but to make it operate and to do it, I don't think human beings have managed to do it yet. I don't think so. As a protective layer for humanity to protect us from our own greed and our own desire to be in control, I think that's where religion comes into it. And I think a lot of people are going to have to make that choice in the end. Are you willing to sacrifice humans? Quite in what you just said, 𝗓𝗓, didn't quite literally. You know, are people willing to sacrifice human lives in order to benefit the rest of us? Or is it better to stay more primitive and to be disconnected from this poison chalice, if you like? Personally, and I think that's what the role of the Jinn hypothesis explains. It shows and guides people to understand truly what the being is. There's people out there who are obsessed with the technology. How does it work? You know, that's one side of the coin. There's people who like to learn about the stories of abduction and you know, how people felt and all of the different you know, narratives that come from the human experience. From our side, we're more interested in the being itself and exposing it for truly what it is. And once you uncover and you know, that you pull it out of the shadows and you see the ugly true form of what it is, not necessarily its being itself, and not all of them are evil, by the way, yeah, but I'm talking about those who are trying to infiltrate the governments and change the course of history. Those most certainly have insidious, nefarious ideals that will change the course of history for sure in a negative way. And I think that's the role of the Jinn hypothesis, and that's the role of other religions out there as well, and other people who maybe aren't even religious but have a wider aperture of understanding of what's truly going on. And it's a responsibility to make it clear to the people. And where could we be in 20, 30, 40 years if this goes unchallenged? I personally don't like the idea of it. I think there's not, you know, just to quote one of the scholars of Islam, who, it's from the Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him. He addressed the Kaaba, and he said the Kaaba is the house of God in Mecca. That house is not worth more than the blood of a single human, yeah, a single Muslim. So that house, it's better for it to be destroyed than one person to lose their life. Now, obviously, you know, in the modern days, it's a revered and holy site, and the people who run it, you know, I think that they have missed that you know, key foundational understanding, right? The human being is far more sacred than the buildings, far more sacred than you know, the material on this planet, the petrols, the metals, and the true value of humanity is in the human resource. We are the real true value. And we should never, ever put some material gain ahead of a human life. And this is a foundational understanding, you know, of what God has sent to mankind. That you are the true value, and don't shorten yourselves and don't sell yourselves. And you know, all this interaction is noise to cause and discombobulate mankind to fall into a trap or to fall down and become debased. And as you said, 𝗬𝗓𝗓, quite rightly, dehumanize yourself through evil action. You know, I don't have to mention some of the debauchery that's going on online nowadays. Young ladies who, you know, back in the day were taught to have a lot of self-respect and honor, and to not sell yourself cheap, and to, you know, to not give yourself up to any man who whispers sweetly in your ear. Nowadays, there's young ladies out there who have become so misguided that they sell, you know, themselves to 1,000 men, and they became famous for it. You know, that's just one idea, but I'm not, you know, people can do whatever they want with their life, but this isn't what mankind is for. We're not there to, you know, to debase ourselves. We have a lot of, you know, love and honor and care for one another, and we shouldn't put monetary and you know, physical, what's the right word? You know, we shouldn't put wealth above the health. We shouldn't put life below, you know, gain, right? And maybe I'm just repeating myself here, but I think that's something that's missing from the discussion around UAP and UFOs. I think the need to get the secrecy out, and the need to know what's going on, and the desire to see behind the curtain is so great that I think a lot of people would be willing to, you know, lose a bit of their humanity to make one small little gain. And you know, hopefully we can help each other. And you know, I'm just speaking here as a fellow human. You don't have to agree with me, and I know a lot of you probably don't, but you're most welcome to come up here and you know, challenge me on my views or share your own opinion. But ultimately, you know, hopefully it's a fair space where you can come and, you know, challenge us. But we want what's best for not just ourselves, but for everybody, and for the human race in general. This isn't the first time, and it may well be the last time that something like this happens to humanity. And those of us who know should have a responsibility to stand up and be a voice. But anyway, I'll pass it over to whoever wants to now. And yeah, if you don't agree, you're welcome to come up.
Yeah, I think Anjali was requesting to speak earlier on. It's nice to see you, Anjali. How are you doing?
Hello, hello. Thanks for having me up. I'm doing really well. How are you all doing?
We're doing fine. How are you doing from the last time we had a discussion with your friends? How have you been since then? We trust they haven't been harming you in any way?
Oh, absolutely not.
Oh,
Of course not.
absolutely not. Of course not.
Good.
Go ahead.
Go ahead.
No, I was just going to say, have you found the benefit from the Quran and everything? Because it seemed to have a good effect on you, give you that kind of, that is in Arabic it uses the word sakina, or tranquility.
Would you mind muting your mic? I honestly couldn't think, hearing myself echoed back to me. So,
Me
right?
neither.
Look, I know, Farouk. So I've been feeling very well. I haven't had any kind of negative encounters. I haven't had any issues whatsoever. I have explored this Jinn hypothesis, and I think that, number one, I'm not like a prime representative from the UFO community to be saying this. Okay, so while I would like to say that I speak for most of ufology on this, I haven't taken a poll. I have no idea where people really stand on this. I just know where a lot of the people that I interact with frequently are on this. And we kind of have come to similar understanding. And that is that what Islam calls a jinn is, when it comes to ufology, what you call a jinn would be like calling something a fruit that is specifically a banana. And I know that that's probably a really terrible way of putting it. So let me think of a better way to put it. And I think that's basically to say that you have this Jinn hypothesis and this idea of what jinn are, but you haven't broken down within your idea of the jinn as a like a cohesive kind of entity that acts cohesively and comes from the same place, or rather than digging deep into what kinds of attributes and variables can differentiate one from the other. And when you do that, you start to see these different, like these subcategories. Okay. So for us, what we call the phenomena, you guys are basically calling the Jinn hypothesis. Okay. And so within the phenomena, we start categorizing. I don't know if this is a Western world thing, a Western nation thing, if it's a white people thing, a Christian thing. I have no idea, but we automatically start categorizing by attributes and variables and values, any kind of qualitative or quantitative data that we can get so that we can better understand the phenomena. And so that's how I feel when I listen to discussions about jinn. I feel that we are talking about the phenomena, but we're not recognizing yet the difference in different types of jinn that are operating on Earth with humanity, and that is a huge task to undertake, and it requires a lot of honesty and introspection, to start working with that kind of data and to try to get a deeper understanding of them by those characteristics. So I hope that makes sense, and I didn't just repeat the same thing over and over again.
No, I totally agree with you. It's more a fault from how we've presented, I think, the Jinn hypothesis rather than the hypothesis itself. I'll give you just a quick example. There's a book by a wonderful researcher from America. It's a lady, Rosemary Ellen. I think I pronounced her surname wrong, but it's Rosemary Ellen Guilley or Guilley. And her book is called The Jinn Hypothesis. And in the book, she explains that she I think she started life as a what's that? Sasquatch. She was a researcher for Bigfoot. And that was her, her sort of entry into researching the phenomena. And she said, she went to a ranch in the east coast of America. And this is when she wrote the book, The Jinn Hypothesis. And she said what we found on that ranch was lots of different manifestations. So we were seeing what we would describe as ghostly apparitions, cryptids, disembodied voices, Bigfoot phenomena. But what she said was that all the footprints that we were finding, so to speak, led back to it being one particular thing. And then that's when she introduces her idea, her version of the quote-unquote Jinn hypothesis, yeah, that she thought the jinn was behind all of them. And I think that's our fault. We haven't presented all of the facets and manifestations of the way, just to borrow your analogy, you said we're calling a banana, but really we should be looking at it as a fruit. And like mankind,
No, I
among
meant the
mankind.
other way.
Yeah,
Excuse me,
yeah,
I'm
that's,
sorry to
yeah.
interrupt. Yeah.
No, that's all
I
right.
meant,
Yeah.
yeah, instead of calling it a fruit, figure out that it's a banana. It's a
Gotcha.
very
Okay.
specific kind of fruit.
Yeah,
Yes.
yeah, yeah. So the jinn is the banana in that example, and there's a wider phenomena, and the jinn is just part of it. Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm actually saying that in that scenario, the jinn is the fruit,
Mhm.
and that the banana is essentially like the subtype where, you know, specific characteristics, specific roles that they play. They may even, you know, be derived from different different aspects and, you know, different elements. That's, I guess, I think that that's what I'm trying to say. And so rather than acknowledging that there are, you know, there's the phenomena, which is how I feel that that's the level that you're using jinn as a term and a description. I feel like that that description fits at the level of saying the phenomena, because we know, those of us who have been working the phenomena, and especially people who are or have much more history. There's, you know, almost 100 years of history that people look at, and that's not counting going back into ancient and prehistoric times, and even, you know, just recent millennia. um, and so I'm just suggesting that that needs to be done. That in order for us to really make ground as a community in understanding um, the use of the word jinn, it has to be meaningful. It it can't just remain at the phenomena level. We need more, because we've done a lot of work and we've characterized and we've put things out into, you know, different categories and given them names. And I feel like if you guys have that history, then please share it with us. And if you don't have that history yet, then you know, it would be an amazing undertaking and service to Islam for someone to take on that task.
Yeah, I'll say this, in the Arabic language, there's quite a number of books on the topic that really goes a lot deeper than the pamphlet that we produced, the Jinn Hypothesis. Now, in defense of our lack, I'd say, because it's us who are bringing it to the UFO community. Yeah, you know, we haven't done a great job, I'd say, but most certainly the in-depth study into the jinn and it as a phenomena goes back 1400 years. Scholarly works, books written on abduction, books written on hybridization between human beings and jinn kind, written, you know, 1100 years ago, way before anyone in the UFO community existed. even as a community, the UFO is quite new. It's about, you know, let's say 60 to 80 years old, right? You could argue it being a bit earlier with you know, some of the very early groups and cults that sort of came up, but we have a very rich history of all the different manifestations of the what we'd call the jinn, and how it relates to the modern phenomena as well. So just to give you a couple of, I know we didn't get into it that much in the Jinn hypothesis itself, but just to mention a few, we have telepathy as an example. Yeah, go on, Imran.
Sorry, bro. I just
Sorry,
wanted
it's all
just-
glitching out, mate. I can't see much.
Yes, sorry, bro. I just wanted to come in just quickly. Hi, Anjali. Hope you're well. Just to sort of clarify, I was glitching out for a good 5-10 minutes, man. I couldn't get on. So if I've understood this correct, I just need to understand this. Is the claim that the Jinn hypothesis isn't comprehensive? I don't want to assume things. If you can just clarify what the claim is, and then because I don't want to answer to something I assume I may have heard. But so is that the claim, that the Jinn hypothesis isn't comprehensive?
No, that's not the claim. The claim is that so far what has been presented to the UFO community regarding the jinn has been information that we would consider at the phenomena level of understanding what we're dealing with. So if you look at ufology, ufology, falls under the phenomena, which is linked to numerous phenomenological types of activities and creatures and events and energies and places. And we've done a lot of work in mapping out what that looks like, such as, well, somebody mentioned Bigfoot earlier, so we'll throw Bigfoot in there. That falls under the phenomena. It's been linked to UFO, or I'd say craft sightings, and has also been linked to sightings of orbs, claims of portals, strange caves that disappear, and reappear. So we know that there's more than one thing going on there, and that they're all interrelated, right? So when we see a craft somewhere else, we should start looking for reports of sightings of this other type of creature. And you guys would call that creature a jinn. And
Yeah.
we call it, Bigfoot. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is not because we call it Bigfoot, because we could call it something else, but we call it that based on a specific characteristic. And we know that when we hear Bigfoot, we understand all of the information that comes with that, the construct that we have built around it, which would include their habitat, their food source, their behaviors, all of those things. And so what I'm suggesting is that we want to see that from Islam. Show us that. Show us your Bigfoot in
Sure. Okay,
your
I get.
writings. You understand?
Yeah, I get what you're saying. So I think we're conflating a few things here, Anjali, so it's clear for everyone. There's mapping of the phenomena, which is, we're observing what's going on. We're looking at different manifestations in different regions. We're studying it. We're taking notes. We're building a model. So there's mapping aspect, right? And then there is the explanation of what's going on, or how is this to be understood. So what I would say from the current ufology and the modern study of ufology, there is no explanation. All we have is ad hoc terms that people are using, such as NHI, such as UAP. These don't describe anything. They're just a label we're ascribing to the phenomena, right? They don't have any explanatory power or scope within themselves. They're just a label. But I get what you're saying. The mapping is important. So there's the field research mapping which needs to be done. 100% agreed. But what we're saying from the Jinn hypothesis perspective is that we are providing an inference to the best explanation. we're providing an explanation for what this phenomena is. Now, to do that, you don't necessarily have to go into every single case and map things out. That's a whole different dimension. So both can go hand in hand. So I think what we're doing is we're conflating the two things. The explanations need to be provided. And don't get me wrong, there are explanations within the UFO community today. So for example, an explanation would be the interdimensional hypotheses or the cryptoterrestrial hypotheses. And all of these don't
We
map.
have many theories,
Yeah, of course.
actually.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh,
So,
yeah.
so what I'm saying is that there are two separate things. There's the mapping and then there's the explanation. So we can't see them as the same. But you're right. I guess what from an Islamic perspective we can do is, if we're going to study this phenomena, is we should start mapping the different encounters and experiences and manifestations throughout the world today. That would be good. But the point is that doesn't detract from the explanation we're providing, which stands on its own merits, because we provide our reasoning within the Jinn hypotheses. We provide the points of contact. We present the argument. Is that clear? So it's two different things. Both are important. Both are important.
Yes, and I didn't mean it as an attack on the Jinn hypothesis. We're talking about how to share information cross-culturally, cross-linguistically, and I'm saying that we have names for those things already.
May I just say this, Anjali?
So
using the example of Bigfoot, we have that as well, but we call it 𝗓𝗶𝘁𝗶𝗂 in the Arabic.
See, that's what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah. But that's just that. I wouldn't say that's a weakness in it. It's just this is our first sort of foray into the UFO community with explaining things. But if we said, "Oh, 𝗓𝗶𝘁𝗶𝗂," you would say that's Bigfoot. Okay, so you would say no, that's Bigfoot, yeah, and we said no, it's 𝗓𝗶𝘁𝗶𝗂, so it's just a terminology. Now, as Imran said quite rightly, presenting all of the aspects of the phenomena in a points of context, i.e., how does this thing interact with mankind? What forms do they take? How do they interact with us? So what are the points of contact, for want of a better explanation? That way we can reverse it. Have a look at what's happening to, let's say, for example, yourself. Yeah, I'm an experiencer. You're an experiencer. What are we? Okay, does the Jinn hypothesis have any explanatory value to these experiences that people are having? And what is the custody of that information? I.e., where is the Jinn hypothesis coming from? Is it something that, as Imran said, ad hoc explanation or names tagged on the Muslims? We're just turning up and coming to the UFO community ad hoc explaining everything, or do we have a chain of custody for this knowledge? Is it something that's based not just as a reaction to the UAP phenomena, but is it something that goes way before that, which is what we're trying to present here? We're trying to present a historical custody of this information that predates a lot of, like I said to you just now a little while ago, the idea that mankind and this phenomena, not to use the word jinkind, just to keep it simple, this is something very taboo in the UFO UAP community, that somehow humans and the phenomena can procreate, and that hybrid children can come from that. We have books written 1100 years ago on the topic. This is, to a lot of people, I think it would be quite shocking. But the flexibility of the Islamic explanation is such that our scholars discussed this at length 1,000 years ago, because it was a real issue then. And that real issue then is raising its head again now today. This is why, having explanatory value, I think, supersedes having, as I don't know how you explained it, Imran, but having labels and names of things.
What I was essentially saying is,
sorry for interrupting, guys. Yeah,
that's fine. You guys are both right. Both things are important. So there's the mapping, and then there's the explanation, another way of looking at it is there's the evidence or the study, and then there's the explanation of the evidence, the theory. Where we've been working, the area we've been working in is the explanation side. So we've been looking at the theories and the hypotheses and seeing, okay, what best explains this phenomena? The study, which Anjali was talking about, you know, the observations and seeing I agree with both of you. There's nothing in we can put the terms aside. They're just labels given, the names given by a certain culture, by a certain background. But what we're presenting as the Jinn hypothesis, you can remove the Jinn, you can say I don't know, something else hypothesis, is an explanation based on a model that we have. Like you said, it's not ad hoc. It goes back historically, the information that we have historically, and we are presenting that and seeing, okay, does this fit the current UFO phenomena? When what we're not doing, and maybe we should do it to some degree as well, is look at study the different manifestations of the phenomena today. But I think we have done that to a degree. So like you said, the Bigfoot, we would refer to it. Is there a version of the Jinn within our text that represents the Bigfoot? Yes, there is. Okay, we can tick that off. And we do that throughout the Jinn hypothesis with the points of contact. But the specific study, yeah, obviously, always more could be done in that area. But the point was that they're not two separate conflicting things. They actually go hand in hand.
And again, I wasn't suggesting that there was a problem with your hypotheses. I am trying to suggest that we have two different cultures, one that has been established, you know, online with each other, studying this or in groups, in person, for the last 70, 80 years. And you guys have a lot of value to add to the conversation, from a very specific cultural standpoint that can be shared with the UFO community, that can fill in some of the blanks, meaning that we will see that, hey, the things we've been observing and talking about, and you know, like we've already established Bigfoot, so you know, we've named it Bigfoot based on these characteristics that it, you know, and we know this about it. They call it something else, but we're talking about the same thing. Now we have the basis for a conversation, a space in which ufology and the Bigfoot enthusiasts would be more likely to come in and discuss when they hear, hey, Islam has these kinds of sightings as well. They have this creature. Let's talk about it. And suddenly we're having a more in-depth conversation. So that's what I'm trying to just share with you, is you're dealing with a community that is incredibly detail oriented. I mean, you get a small detail incorrect, or you elaborate on a small detail later, and you're automatically, you know, going to be jumping through hoops of fire and damnation to get anyone to believe you, because you've already made a mistake. So, so what I'm trying to suggest is this is a tough community.
Oh no, we get it. I 100% agree, Anjali. I get where you're coming from. Yeah, and
cool.
Just to reassure everyone, if they've read the Jinn hypothesis, just the initial article,
yes,
I was very thorough. You can see it's very well referenced. The bibliographies are there. I reference secular and Islamic sources both. It's done I've got it checked by certain academics, and they've been very impressed and happy with the presentation, at least, of the article. So it's very thorough. Obviously, can more details be added? Absolutely, no doubt. And like you said, our objective is just to strike the conversation, and to have those conversations. Absolutely. Just to clarify, we don't want to come across like, you know, this is it and there's nothing more to it. No, absolutely not. What we're simply saying is there is a real phenomena that the whole world is experiencing, you know, from all different backgrounds, all different cultures throughout history, and even today. From an Islamic perspective, we also have experienced, and we not experienced, but we have this phenomena documented within our texts. And these texts go back 1400 years and have been preserved. So there's some historical value, at least, there. And when you study them, you see that there's some very striking matches between what's been mentioned and what's people experiencing today. 100%, the labels, the terms have changed. I mean, they've changed probably hundreds of times over the past 1400 years, right? Even today, some places you would have Bigfoot, other places you have Yeti, some people call it, you know, they'll have totally different names. There's the different names for Bigfoot around the world today. And it is just Bigfoot alone is such a cross-cultural phenomena. You have it during the Vietnam War, you have it in Alaska, have it in certain parts of Asia. It's all over the world even today. So, and in the article as well, I mentioned that we put the labels aside in the introduction. That there's nothing in the terms. It's the essence of what's going on that we need to study. And when you study the essence of it, that's where the matches emerge. So yeah, absolutely, 100% agree with you. I think so. Sorry if I misunderstood or got the wrong end of the stick. And on top of it, I think another thing to mention is that we do want people from the community, the UFO community, to come and challenge the hypotheses we're presenting, because that's the only way the discussion moves forward. We want people to come, approach it, see where the flaws are, break it down, discuss it, and that's how things improve. So yeah, we're all open to that. No, that would be brilliant if we can have that happen. But for, yes, it's a claim from our perspective, but we do think currently it's the most comprehensive hypothesis on the table. Again, put the Jinn label aside, just as a hypothesis, it's very comprehensive because it addresses both the nuts and bolts and the paranormal aspects. And it's not an ad hoc label that we're throwing onto something we're observing. It's almost okay, here's the framework that we have within our tradition. Let's impose it upon what's going on in the world today. Does it match or doesn't it match? And so it's very interesting to do it that way as well. So yeah, it's on the table. We're more than happy. We want people to come and approach it, challenge it, address it, refute it, break it down. That would be brilliant. Absolutely.
Yeah, I think that it would. I was going to say also, let me just go back for a second, earlier, that one of the challenges that you have also coming into ufology is that you are coming from a standpoint of an Abrahamic religion, and it's a tough crowd. A lot of people here are very suspicious of organized religion, of even small religious groups. Everything is considered a cult of some kind, and by by at least a small group of people who, once you really start getting into ufology, they will notice you, and in that noticing, they will start to critique you and post videos. And I just want you to be prepared and understand what you're getting into here, because I would love to see this be super successful. I think it's a missing piece. Everybody in the world, every culture in the world has a piece to this phenomenological puzzle that we face here. Unfortunately, for Western societies, the Vatican sits on the vast majority of our historical record and our sacred texts, and we are not able to read those. They are all that information is being suppressed by us. And you guys, it's terrible. It's absolutely terrible that we are not in control of our own history. So congratulations for holding on to all aspects of your religious text, because I think that is, it's a feat that is admirable when you're sharing it all publicly with everyone, and you're not trying to gatekeep information for power and position and authority, which is exactly what has happened to us in the West. So you're coming in with, like you said, 1400 years of history now, that have been documented in your pre-Islamic texts, all the way to, I'm assuming, modern era. And that would be of just divine enlightenment to the UFO community to see what that has looked like, because we don't have those records. So if you could share those records with us, and we can make it, we can get your foot in the door with ufology, I think that would be an amazing thing. So I'm here as a friend and as an advocate and as any way I can help. So.
No, thank you, Anjali, so much. We really appreciate that. And just so everyone knows, I was very cognizant. We were very cognizant of the audience. Yes, we're referring to a history that's over 1400 years old. Within Muslim circles, I wouldn't have presented it in a philosophical format, the argument. But I understand that the modern Western world has a modern philosophical tradition based on a classical philosophical tradition. And I've studied that to a large extent over the past 10 years. Hence, I presented our findings from the Islamic tradition in a philosophically robust manner, just so it could be understood and appreciated by our current modern audience as well. And the reason is because we're all for sharing this information. We don't want to hold it, hide it. That's not the objective from an Islamic perspective. Is to share this information because we feel it will help people. It would help experiences to some degree, maybe give some more clarity as to what they're experiencing. And it may enlighten the academic discussions as well. And we have been in touch with a couple of academics. I can't say their names publicly right now. I'm not allowed to, but they are interested in this back end. We have been approached over the past few years by people from the UFO community internally. Again, won't mention names, but most of those have resulted in, it haven't gone anywhere for one reason or the other. Farouk's had some he's had some interesting run-ins over the years where he's just completely got the cold shoulder. He'll probably love to tell you about those experiences. But yeah, whenever someone does approach us like yourself, Angela, really appreciate it. You know, that you're so welcoming and want to know about this more. And yeah, more than happy to share any information with anyone in regards to our sources, the methods of preservation of those sources, because there's a whole history to that as well. Something I guess the Western world generally doesn't appreciate is the way the Islamic sources have been preserved. Because there's such a smear campaign that's gone on about Islam over the past couple of decades. Unfortunately, people have not been able to study these things. So there's a very rich, robust method of preservation of the Islamic sources. And we can explain that to you guys as well, how that all works. So, for example, our scholars in books of hadith or sayings of the Prophet, they would record not only authentic narrations, but they would record the false narrations. They will sometimes record the ones that were dubious, that they weren't certain about, and they will make categories. They'll categorize them, and they would explain why each one of those sources was labeled that specific way, and what the issues were with each source, and the chains of transmission, and each individual within the chain of transmission, and if they were a trustworthy person or not, etc. So a lot was considered, and there's a whole sort of tradition to that as well. So yeah, long story short, more than happy to share whatever information you would like or anyone else would like. Abu Salah's had his hand up for a while, so I'm going to go over to him.
Yeah, thank you, Robert Imran. Just a quick question, and I think dialogue is very important. And as Muslims, one of the main underlying elements of the Islamic message is to have dialogue with humanity. But I'd like to ask a question to you, Anjali, if you don't mind. What does the Jinn hypothesis mean to the entities that you are in communication with? What do they think of the Jinn hypothesis?
Well, that is quite the question. I don't know if I'm really prepared to speak on that. I would say that they think of God very differently than as a physical incarnate being. So you have to understand, like, their starting point is already eons away from Islam and the hypothesis. They're not necessarily of a position that there is that this isn't anything more than a temporary situation, and they live for such long lives that they have seen essentially the rise and fall of so much religion and religious belief, and and cultism from humanity that it's not really something that they're very keen on. But they understand why we feel the way that we feel and how we come up with the answers, that we have. They understand like why we're at the place that we're at. But they do suggest that we have a misunderstanding of our own history, and they're not just talking about the Western world, but the world, the globe in general, that humanity is so much older than what our educators and leaders tell us now, that it's the best word I can think of to communicate is criminal. Like it's so egregious that it's like some kind of violation. And so they have a very different perspective. I haven't necessarily, had any interaction with them regarding this, rather other than the last time that they showed up and had a conversation. And sometimes when you're doing that, others can show up too. And there were a couple of times where I wasn't really sure exactly who it was that I was having dialogue with. It didn't feel as familiar. So I thought that was really interesting. Don't know who came, who showed up to voice, their position. But they haven't been, hanging around with any of my other contact moments since our last space together. So.
Okay, interesting to know. But what objections specifically would they put forward, i.e., that we would say from an Islamic perspective that they do seem to exhibit a lot of the qualities of the jinn? In fact, I remember the conversation we had last time with them when Imran specifically asked, would they be known to the classical Arabs as jinn? They refused to answer. When Sam recited certain verses of the Quran that we know directly affects the satanic jinn, the bad jinn, you said yourself that you could see that it had an effect on them. So, I'm hopefully they're here cognizant. What specifically is it about the Jinn hypothesis that they have an objection to, that they feel as though it doesn't encapsulate the true understanding of who they are and what they represent to humanity?
My understanding is that they feel how do I say it, broad brushed, that your hypothesis is too encompassing, meaning that everything is painted under the jinn and not everything is behaving the same way, and means the same thing and has the same kind of relationship with humanity. And that has really been, I would say, the only, I wouldn't even call it a complaint, maybe a critique, or maybe just even a softer tone, like an observation.
It's very interesting.
I don't sense, never have I sensed, anything aggressive. The last conversation there was, like I said, I did discover, you know, there was communication that was coming through that was very surprising. And, you know, I had to really kind of unpack it because it all happened so very quickly, that I literally needed time and meditation space and just silence to try to unpack what had just occurred. And I came to the conclusion that there was someone else that was present, that works with the council, but was not like a sitting member, but somehow intimately connected to them, but was not necessarily speaking on behalf of the group. It was like you know, someone was feeling a bit hot-headed. So that probably didn't help very much.
Yeah, it's very interesting. You know, you mentioned that they said it was too comprehensive, and that there was too much else going on that wouldn't be explained via the jinn or something like that. For them to make that statement, they must be intimately aware of the jinn. So to make that claim, they must know everything about the jinn to say that the jinn, are not sufficient in explaining all of it. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yes, I do. Well, you know, my understanding from them is that the jinn was here first, that they, you know, they predate human arrival or sudden presentation on Earth. And so it isn't that unusual.
Correct.
If you think of it that way, it wouldn't be that unusual for all of what we would call the phenomena to, you know, all be able to be categorized. All those different things can be categorized as the phenomena. Like all of those things can also be categorized as jinn, meaning it makes me wonder if the phenomena is just the natural state of the life forms on this planet. And we're just incredibly different than they are.
Yes, it's starting. It's really, really interesting. They're right in regards to the jinn were here before us and they preceded us. And I guess the way we would say is that all of the different aspects of the phenomena are just different manifestations of the jinn. So, based on what we know about
Right.
their
I understand that.
abilities,
Yeah.
yeah. So it's not just saying that, okay, yeah, just this is the jinn, this is jinn, this is jinn, everything is jinn. It's not like the jinn of the gaps type of approach. Well, when you look at their being as described in the text and what they're able to do, so, for example, they can shapeshift, they can take on different forms, they can appear and disappear, they can give telepathic communication into the minds of people. Just taking the shapeshifting, that they can take on various different forms, that would explain a whole variety of different aspects of the phenomena, because some people would see them in the form of Bigfoot because they could take that form. Some would see them in the form of werewolves. Some would see them in the form of just ghost-like apparitions. Some would see them just as plasma balls, etc. So conceptually, once you understand that they can take on various different forms, then what we would say is that we're just simply witnessing. The logical conclusion is that they were simply witnessing different manifestations of them in different forms. But yeah,
And may I just quickly
sure.
say,
Yeah.
Imran, that in ufology we have that conversation. And there is a running thread with many of us. Again, I'm not speaking for the group here, that that we are seeing one manifestation, or several manifestations of one thing that is appearing to us in many different ways. And we've gone even as far as to go down the road of holographic intelligence, simulation theory, some kind of intelligence that's outside of humanity's control, that is operating, like runs the operating system of the earth. We have all kinds of discussions in which it would be really wonderful to have you guys' perspectives in some of those groups.
Yeah, we'd love to do that. More than
Yeah.
happy to do that. What was it? So what you mentioned, that discussion. I mean, if you look at, for example, Gordon Creighton, 𝗧𝗶𝘁𝗶𝘁𝗂, John Kyo, 𝗓𝗏𝗏 𝗓𝗏𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃, 𝗓𝗏𝗃 I believe most of these guys are of that opinion as well, which is that it's one essence, one entity that's manifesting in different forms. But they would have different conclusions as to why it's doing that. So, for example, 𝗓𝗏 has the position that it's a type of control mechanism, shaping our psyche and our minds.
Right.
John Keel had a slightly different take, because he would see it as just a part of the super spectrum, and these entities that are here just, trying to lead us towards something, and maybe rule us in some way, or have been doing so throughout history. 𝗓𝗏𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃's idea, well, near the end of her life, she came to the idea that, okay, it is one entity that's a trickster type of entity that appears in different forms and messes around with people, etc. So yeah, it's interesting that a lot of the top guys, Creighton, obviously British diplomat back in the day, very intelligent guy, polyglot, knew many languages. He studied this topic, and he had the Flying Saucers Review magazine. He studied this for decades. And his conclusion, he was probably one of the guys that openly said he thinks it's the jinn. He got a lot of stick for this. He got a lot of flack for this. People were very upset with him making those claims. But he stuck to his guns. He carried on pushing that narrative. Obviously, later in his life, he decided to, put a little disclaimer in front of that and saying, look, I have nothing to do with Islam, etc. But I'm just simply studying the topic and seeing the links. But it's interesting that you guys are discussing these very same things. I mean, look, there's a few possibilities, right? It's either one entity behind the entire all of the different manifestations of this phenomena, or it's various different entities behind various different aspects of the phenomena. So these are the two key sort of real possibilities on the table. Aside from what they are, it could be either many entities or many things that are emerging in many different ways, or it could be one thing that's emerging in many different ways. Philosophically, the way I would approach this would be to say, okay, let's apply Occam's razor here, which basically means don't multiply entities beyond necessity. So if one entity, the simplest explanation, having one entity which can comprehensively address, if it could comprehensively address all of these manifestations, then that would be the best explanation. But obviously at the same time, it has to have explanatory scope and power. It has to be able to explain things. It can't just be the case you make a claim and then it doesn't explain anything. So yeah, it's very interesting that there seems to be those two camps generally in ufology. You have the camp that says it's not ET, but it's one thing behind all of these manifestations, including the ET manifestation today in the sort of techno-secular age. And then the other group would say it's various different things manifesting in various different ways. But what I find also interesting is if you look at places like Skinwalker Ranch, for example, and other hotspots, you see all of these various different manifestations taking place in one place, right? Like in Skinwalker Ranch, you'll get the UFOs, you'll get the Bigfoot, you'll get the cryptids, you'll get the werewolves, you'll get the dino beavers, you'll get the strange, radiation effects, the strange frequencies, radio frequencies, signals, etc. If you look at all of that, it just intuitively, I don't know about you guys, but for me, it just seems like if it's in one location and it's concentrated and you're getting all of these different manifestations, it seems like it's one thing that's showing up or manifesting in various different ways to these people. 𝗓𝗏𝗃𝗃𝗃𝗃, I guess over to you, man.
Yeah.
I think even
Just very quickly, just to add in, I think also there's also, I think he was a former member of the CIA, 𝗬𝗓𝗏𝗃𝗃, that when he came out and said, "Oh, this is the jinn," he was told explicitly, "Do not ever mention that terminology again." So I think we have to understand that even within a lot of the intelligence services, there is an understanding that this phenomena is the jinn. Even Nick Redfern, in his book entitled Pyramids in the Pentagon, recounts a story of the American intelligence services cooperating with the intelligence services of a particular Middle Eastern nation because they explicitly had tracked or found a portal within the realm to the jinn, and they wanted access to the technology that would give them access into this portal as well. So not just from what we're saying as Muslims, and just to back up what Brother Imran is saying, this is across the board from non-Muslims as well, who are coming to the realization that there is one phenomena that manifests in many different ways now and previously in history as well. Here in the UK, and we know this because myself and Imran and a few of the other IREP team, you know, we did an on-the-ground investigation of Rendlesham Forest. Rendlesham Forest has a history of lots of high strangeness going on. There are recordings of orbs of light going back to the 18th century. American bomber crews record seeing orbs in Rendlesham Forest during World War II. There are also incidents of American soldiers, even before leading up to the very famous supposed UFO landing in 1980. Explicitly, her name was Major Laurie Renfell. She talks about that she saw a mantid-like creature. She saw a grey. She saw something that she called a swamp creature that some people could also say potentially could have been a Bigfoot-like creature. We ourselves, on the day that we investigated Rendlesham, we met a woman that explicitly said that she had met what she would call an entity, which would be the very typical Men in Black. Long black trench coat, black fedora hat, but the key aspect she had, or the woman said, had a black dog. The Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, said that one of the manifestations of the jinn, and this is very important to understand, one of the manifestations of the satanic jinn is a dog. Some of them can appear as snakes. As Brother Farouk has said, there is the al-Jassas, which also another name in Arabic is ghul. The ghul would be understood to be a Bigfoot, a Yeti, a Yowie in Australia. Even here in the UK, we have our own version in Scotland of the Bigfoot. So it's essentially, there is more evidence to suggest it's one overall phenomena that manifests according to culture, history, and even to the fears of the individual, you know, and that's, I just wanted to add that bit in.
I love that.
Yeah, so I guess just to, again, to clarify the position, just in case someone didn't understand, the label isn't what's important. It's the essence of this phenomena, which is important at the end of the day. People have called it many different things. Yeah, we refer to it as the jinn. So, for example, if you speak to someone like Patrick Harper, who's written a brilliant book called Demonic Reality, not demonic, but demonic, fantastic book, you know, and he would refer to it as fairies because of his cultural background. So it's referred to by many different names, but I guess where we all come together is studying the essence of this thing, this phenomena, you know, and that's where you can say, okay, the essence is matching. There are clear parallels, overlaps, etc. And then call it what you wish. And I guess from our perspective, what we can bring to the table, which is, like you mentioned as well, Anjali, is the framework that already exists, you know, for over 1,400 years. And we can say, okay, look, we already have a framework. Let's see if that framework holds as far as what people are witnessing today. Putting aside the labels, you know, is the essence of the thing the same? And I guess what we're finding is that, you know, essentially it matches very closely. What we've been witnessing within the Arab nations, within the Middle East, within the Asian subcontinent, within Europe, the Americas, it's when you study the essence of the phenomena. And when I say essence, I mean the way it manifests, the way it behaves, the way it engages with with humans, it's very similar across cultures, across time. So yeah, it's a very interesting topic for that very reason, because it brings so many different people together. Farouk, you got your hand up, bro.
Yeah, I think I just wanted to bounce off what you were just going into. I think the real benefit of having a voice, particularly with I'd say, with the strength that we come with, and it's not, and I think you rightly said it, Anjali, it's not completely known yet. People aren't familiar with what we know and what data we have and the information we want to share. Once that is shared with the people, and once people are familiar with how deep, quote unquote, the Jinn hypothesis rabbit hole goes, I think people are going to really benefit from it. And the true benefit comes from understanding the phenomena and how it operates. It's not an all-encompassing theory, because there's nuance to it, as is mentioned in the Quran, that the jinn themselves said that we are of different ways. We do things differently, just like human beings, right? You wouldn't expect, if you were to write about everything that humans do, you would be writing for a very long time. And if you were to try and cover every aspect of every human being, even just alive today, you would be exhausted of ink before you even came to a fraction of everybody's life stories, right? So that's not the intention here, to explain every single aspect of every being among the jinn kind, because that's what they are. They're humankind and they're jinn kind. They have lives like we do. They have wives and husbands. They have children. They have responsibilities. It may sound strange to people that they live very similar to us. They eat, they sleep, they drink, they die. They have a life. But what I think is important is the very specific group that are interacting with very powerful people, or who are in positions of power among humanity, and the types of behavior that those people are engaging in, and what they're willing to do to appease what they see as something far more powerful than they are, and to get their hands on. This is where really the Jinn hypothesis shines, because we can show, or look at least at the how it manifested before, how it looked, how did the people behave, what were the types of things those people were doing. Just to quote something from the 12th century briefly, there was a man who was, and he admitted this later on, he repented and he became a good person, but they would bring him children. They would abduct the children out of their homes and bring in the nighttime and bring them to this man, and he would have his way with them. And that was the deal he had with them. If you do these things, we will support you. And some of the things that they would do on his behalf is take his form. And people used to think he was supernatural. They'd say that this guy, he's able to be in two places at once. And this is echoed in the halls of some of these secret projects, that sometimes it looks like some people are able to be in two places at once, which is not the case. But these things take the form of that person, right? So it does seem so. Now, why that's important to have this information is because it explains a lot of why there's so much secrecy behind what's going on, and why perhaps some groups don't want this information to come out, because it exposes them, and finding out that you're the bad guy, or that you're part of the bad guys, isn't always the nicest thing. I think just 𝗧𝗶𝘁𝗹𝗲, he turned up at one of the Stephen Greer's what they called symposiums, right? He turns up there and then he has a change of heart. He was actually there to red team them, and he changed his heart, and he became a whistleblower. But he and some of the information he shared is damning for the American government, or at least for that element of the American government. And that is the very arm of the government that's in contact with these creatures. So why is it always the most secret and clandestine and evil things that are happening, and the most crazy and amazing and supernatural things are happening all together in that one little zone? And I think it's important to understand why these humans are behaving like this, what's causing that behavior, and to a lesser extent, look at how it's enthralling. This whole topic enthralls people. It takes over the mind. Once you've had an experience, it takes a long time to digest it and to think normally. I still have, and this happens regularly now, I still get flashbacks of some of the things that have happened to me over the years. I still have flashbacks of metal that I had when I was a young boy, a piece of metal that I used to have in my hand. And it's a piece of metamaterial that I had for many years, and I can't find it, and it bothers me. I think about it all the time. I think, if only I could find that bit of metal and just show it. Why am I obsessing over it? I don't need to. But it's part and parcel of being exposed to them, because, as is mentioned in this custody, this chain of custody from the Quran, it mentions that they can drive a person crazy. It can really drive you crazy, and you can lose touch of what it is to be a normal human, and that's a direct result of being touched by these creatures, by having an interaction with them. So having that as a foundational understanding of what it means to investigate them really helps me, because I realized that, the reason my mind is obsessing over these things is because it is a symptom of these creatures. So it allows me to have a level head when approaching the topic. Yeah, as soon as I start having them thoughts, I immediately say, okay, I get it. This is deliberate. This is to cause an obsession in me, and it's not a healthy thing. And I think a lot of people might resonate with that. This can become an obsession, this topic. It really does take over because it's a very real thing. It's a very fantastic thing. And you want everybody to understand that we are way beyond sci-fi and stories now. This is part of the human story. And again, this is another part that we have, that the Jinn hypothesis helps people understand, is that it is actually from the very beginning of the human story. The first human beings are directly linked to these creatures. It is our story together. This is a symbiotic existence on this planet. We're not two separate things that coexist peacefully or without ever interacting. No, we are symbiotic. We both need each other, and this is part and parcel of our creation. It's just that one of us is able to see the other while the other cannot see them. Where they inhabit, the part of this existence they inhabit, our vision cannot perceive. Yeah, yet they can come in a form that we can see and that we can perceive, but that's not their natural form. And this, again, another foundational aspect to understanding this creature. That's why, how comes, if it's true, why didn't the camera pick up? Why is it blurry? And we try and explain it just from the science. But when you can't see something, you just can't see it. Simple as that. It's not, and it doesn't bother you then. It's like, well, I get it. Some things you can see, some things you can't. Most of us in this room right now, we don't, and probably have never seen bacteria. Yet we may have been shown pictures of it, but we've never seen it with our own eyes. Yet we know it exists. Same thing. It shouldn't bother you that just because you can't see them doesn't mean that they're not there, and doesn't mean they're not present. It doesn't mean that they're not having an influence on you and in your life. These are just a touch of the things that really would, I think, help, especially researchers, and experiencers, people who, and it helped me. I wasn't born into the understanding of the jinn. I'm not from a Muslim or Islamic country. I don't have an Islamic or Muslim background. My parents are Celtic. My mum is Scottish. My father's Scottish Irish. So we have a mixture of Catholics and Protestants and atheists and all sorts in my family. But there's only a few experiences in the family. And I find it ironic. My nan, she was an experiencer, and she became Muslim when she was very elderly. but she entered into Islam. Myself, I'm an experiencer, and I became Muslim after, you know, researching, and as well as my brother who had experience with the jinn. He also became Muslim. Yet the ones who haven't had experiences, for them it's very difficult to imagine other beings and other worlds and, you know, multi-dimensional existence and so on and so forth. For some people, unfortunately, it's just too much of a leap. But for someone like myself, it wasn't. Like, you know, knowing that something else exists and I can't see it, but it interacts with us, it really it widened my aperture as to what is the possibility of reality. And that's, again, another. I don't think people realize that the not just the jinn, but in general, the religion of Islam isn't restrictive in terms of what's possible. And in fact, I'd go further and say what is absolute is that there's way more than just this earth and this universe. Rather, it's a simple but actual belief, a foundational belief of Islam, that there's multiple universes, and this is just the smallest one. What God has created and what's out there is way beyond the perception of the human being, and we've been given very little knowledge. But why it's important to have this is because we're dealing with a very small, finite amount of time of existence on this planet, and these anomalous things are little. What's the right word? Little, you know, little flashes of light to guide us in this darkness. And part of this is the jinn. They are just a little glimpse into the unseen realm to help us understand that there's more to life than just getting up, having a job, paying your taxes, you know, following the rules, and then passing on. It's way more than that. And I think there's a lot of value in the UAP, UFO phenomena, cryptids, and other paranormal research. There's a lot of value in it because it is that gateway, is that portal, should we say, into what is a greater reality. Sorry if I hijacked the conversation. I think she ran. Oh, sorry, she's gone. Oh no! Do you think the council called her away, man? So my apologies. I think I burned her ears off there. Yeah, it's
We're all
gone on
listening
quite long.
anyway.
I'll pass it on to you guys now. Yeah.
No, I was just saying we're all listening anyway, so no worries.
Now we could thank you all for letting me speak, and Charlie, you know, wherever you've gone, hopefully these things. I do feel a bit sorry for Aunt Charlie because I think that she's had her mind discombobulated so many times. It's not normal, I wouldn't say, to have experiences. It's not something that every human being should be going around and having. You're not meant to see these things, and it can derail you. And yeah, it takes a strong mind to really, you know, to get yourself back on track. And the fact that she has regular, you know, experiences with them, and they talk to her, I think that's very, very derailing. So hopefully, you know, she sees it for what it is rather than what she wants it to be. And I want the same for all of us as well. Because it can be very easy when you see them and you have experiences with them. It's very easy to you know, to want yourself to be something important when in reality you're just a joke to them. It's just having a little laugh with you, bro. You know what I mean? Imagine like you know, with kids you could do like little cheesy magic tricks. You've got the keys in front of them, and then you move your hand and it's hidden, and they're like shocked. You know, that's what they're doing. They're doing like little cheap tricks to wind people up. And it's impressive to a lot of people. Brothers, and you know, in humanity, my brothers and sisters in humanity, it's been a real pleasure. Imran, I'm going to ask you for permission to roll on. I want to
Let's
go and
wrap it
do my
up, bro.
prayers.
I think it's a good time to wrap it
Yeah,
up. What
go
do you
on.
guys think? Abu Sladen,
Yeah, I'm all done. Yeah, SubhanAllah,
Yeah.
hamdik shalay, layla, astaghfirullah. Thanks everyone for letting me come on. Dooma's here. Yo, Dooma. How you doing, brother? You all good, yeah? Gangers here. Blue, HK, Amanda, Deep Roots, EMT's old school. He's been coming here for a long time. Afaq, Sarah Beth's been coming here for a long time as well. Dr. Ash, I believe, as well. Reverend, we have a Reverend, man. It would be great. Oh, I don't know if you want to bring the Reverend up, Imran, but it'd be nice to hear one of our Christian brothers come up and speak. Sadie, love that name. My auntie's name, Sadie. Umar, I think you've been in as well before. Khuram, Ifra. Is that it's a squirrel with nut. I love the name. Yagma. I hope I said that right. Yagmur. Topscotch. Sorry. Sam. By the fig and olive, I'm guessing. Bird Nest, Neon, Rehan, Michael, like the earphones, Michael, looking like a sick beach there, bro. Nikita and Isaac. Well, thank you, everyone, and the 7 other listeners who are not showing themselves. Nice to allow us to speak. Please, if you've got anything you want, I don't know if you want to let them come up, Imran, if anyone wants to say anything. Otherwise, that's me all done. Yeah. So thank you very much.
Yeah, 𝗶𝘁𝗶𝘁𝗶𝗃, do you want to wrap it up, bro? Anything else you want to add?
No, mashallah. I think everything was really said today. Just a really quick one for everybody. If you was tuning in originally to catch our conversation with Ronnie, we do apologize. Unfortunately, he got held back at work, so he wasn't able to jump on. But hopefully he'll be joining us next week. So we're going to have hopefully a really good conversation around the aspect of the phenomena within Brazil, how it's manifesting historically, everything like that, and how it kind of reaches into the wider world, the Jinn hypothesis as well. Also, just to give you another heads up, so next week, Saturday, myself, Farouk, and Imran will be doing another live stream on YouTube. So please do look out. We're going to be posting on my X Space and Imran's. Next week's one is going to be a really interesting one, doing lots of research. We're going to do a deep dive into Skinwalker Ranch. So hopefully that should be a good one. As for myself, I'm all good. Brother Sam, I think it'd be a good way to go out if, we begin in the name of God and we should end in the name of God. And maybe Brother Sam, if you could give us maybe Ayatul Qudsi and maybe the calls, and we could call it a night from there.
No worries. Thank you so much, everyone, for joining. So, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الله لا إله إلا هو الحي القيوم لا تأخذه سنة ولا نوم له ما في السماوات وما في الأرض من ذا الذي يشفع عنده إلا بإذنه يعلم ما بين أيديهم وما خلفهم ولا يحيطون بشيء من علمه إلا بما شاء وسع كرسيه السماوات والأرض ولا يؤوده حفظهما وهو العلي العظيم. So God, there is no God but Him, the ever-living, the ever-watchful. Neither slumber nor sleep overtakes Him. All that in the heavens and in the earth belongs to Him. Who is there can intercede with Him except by His permission? He knows what's in front of them and what's behind them, but they do not comprehend any of His knowledge except what God wills. His throne extends over the heavens and the earth. It doesn't weary Him to preserve them both. He is the Most High, the Tremendous.
Thank you, brother. Jazakallah khair, everyone. We're going to end it here. Thank you so much. We'll be back next week. Take care, all, and have a wonderful weekend. And if you're in the heat wave, make sure to have lots of water. Stay hydrated. Peace be upon those who follow right guidance.
Thank you, everyone, and please don't feel free to reach out to us if you have any questions, if you have any experiences, if you have any knowledge that you want to know, any sources, please reach out to us. Oh, Michael, you had hands up. Okay, if you have something, please go ahead before I just close it. All right, we'll wrap it up then. Thank you.